Welcome everyone to the first edition of SDG Action Conclave 2020, and we are conducting today's session focusing on SDG 7, ensure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable and modern energy for all. Let me start off by telling you a bit about our organization, Youth Forum, under Alexis. Youth Forum is a project under Alexis Society, and our team consists of inspired young students and professionals who are solely interested in creating positive social impact by conducting research on policy issues, writing insightful blogs, designing creative social campaigns, organizing life-changing events, and interviewing leaders and change makers. As it is correctly said, the youth are not only leaders of tomorrow, but also partners of today. So we at Youth Forum, a team of creative and encouraging individuals, work with a shared mission, a mission to change the world. So through this first edition of SDG Action Conclave, we wish to bring together the change makers and leaders from around the globe under the hashtag Act for SDGs campaign week of the United Nations. It will help to prepare an actionable agenda that will aid in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. While the world leaders meet virtually at the United Nations General Assembly to grapple issues and give a solution to the tough times, we are trying to do our small bit by taking action, raising awareness, and taking initiation for a better direction ahead. The turning point of the planet and the people needs to be now. So, to start off the session, let me first introduce the speaker today, Tenzin Seldon. Tenzin Seldon is the founding partner and chief executive of The Plant. She has spent her career over a decade in climate, tech, migration, and social enterprise. She has been the intersection of building social impact companies, philanthropy, and building international refugee policy. At The Plant, Tenzin is responsible for leading the local, national, and global programming. She will be creating the internal engine of the plant, working with anchor climate partners, bridging investors and philanthropists, and scaling the global vision for the company. Tenzin served as a senior advisor, a board member of Earth's Call Fund in partnership with League of Change, which deploys solutions in the climate crisis issue. She's also the founder of Kinstep, a social enterprise platform that connects immigrants to safe and steady jobs across the US. Tenzin worked at the United Nations Regional Office of Asia and the Pacific and the United Nations Environmental Program as well. Where she monitored and recommended policy for the region's disaster relief efforts. She has been a visiting lecturer at Stanford University, University of California. So her work has been recognized around the world. Forbes magazine named her the most likely to impact the next century. She's a Harry S. Truman Scholar and also one of the Aussie magazine's 5 civil rights leaders for a new generation. In 2018, she received 21st Century Icon Awards by the London Stock Exchange. And most recently, she was honored at the United Nations as an innovative disruptor. So welcome, ma'am. And we are very happy to have such a change maker here with us today. So let me now introduce the chair of the session. Kunal Mandal is the co-founder of GameSpace, a gamification company which uses quizzes and other games as a tool for personal growth and people management. And he has also founded India.com, a travel portal which helps travelers to discover and book inspiring city experiences provided by local experts. Currently, he's on a mission to teach curiosity as a life skill, increase awareness about sustainability, and empower young Indians to be more than they thought they could be. So let's take forward the discussions today while trying to arrive at solutions through this discussion, while also talking about SDG number 7. So now I would like to hand over the conduct of the session over to Kunal, sir.
Thank you, Savitri, and hello and a very warm welcome to each and every one of you who is joining in and listening in. I have a very, very special guest for today's session. I have the brilliant and beautiful Tenzin Seldon. Tenzin, a very warm to you as well. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much, Savitri, for that introduction, and Kunal for hosting this session.
Tenzin, your story is an exceptional one. coming from a small country in Asia to becoming a Rhodes Scholar and CEO and a change maker. I'm sure you have had to overcome many challenges. So it makes me curious about your journey. And my question to you would be that, please tell us about some of key moments that have transformed your life to what it is today that can possibly inspire our young audience here today.
Sure. I'm, first of all, so excited to be talking to young people. I think that young people always have a special place in my heart because they're the vision that I see the most powerful and clearly. For my story, a lot of it was spent, Kunal, as you said, it's not only small country, I would say small village in a big country. I grew up in the Indian Himalayas with the Tibetan settlement in Dharamsala. Many Indians know it, have visited it for a fun vacation, but I lived there. And when I was about 3 years old, my mom won the immigration lottery to be able to come to the US. And so I always really credit fortune and luck to my success because I think, opportunity is what makes the difference between someone who is successful, quote unquote, versus not. And when I came to America, I had the opportunity to start again, to rebuild a life of being able to intellectually explore. As a child, I was very, always curious intellectually, driven by questions about the world, driven by why is it that so many of the icebergs were melting? Why is it that mountains were changing its shape? And I studied at Stanford, and then I went, as you said, to Oxford. And, all of those elements for me shaped me because I was able to do that in a setting where I had all of the resources to be able to intellectually explore this question with my peers and have professors who really helped me nurture that part of myself. So I credit a lot of my pedagogical training and my upbringing to why I'm this way of being both an innovator and an entrepreneur, but also someone who believes in diplomacy and academia to be able to solve those core issues.
Wow, that's great. I mean, it seems that as I'm glad to hear that curiosity drove you as well as it drives me almost every day and every hour and every minute. I'm glad that that was the same story for you as well. Now, of course, as we all know that you are building this thing called the plant. And for everyone who is joining in and who probably doesn't know, let me tell you, it's a building, and the very building probably where it's located is very, very interesting. It's an abundant coal power plant, which is now utilized as a hub of innovation towards climate change solutions and is truly a symbol of transformation. Tenzin, as a global home for climate solution, please tell us how you even came up with the idea of the plant and what is some of the amazing work that you are doing there?
Yeah. So it's like any other really worthwhile, daring project. It's never one person, it's a group of people. I credit a lot of the plant's original success and vision to my partner, Leela Gorin, who's an incredible developer and visionary. She really laid out everything to be able to take her skills and training as a developer to be able to purchase and ground this physical space. As you said, Kunal, it used to be a former coal burning power plant, and not just any coal burning power plant, but a power plant that used to electrify Grand Central. So it powered New England and gave the engine for New England to be able to be the economy it is today. And now to take a symbolic site like that and to transform it into a people plant, a climate plant, with, I would say, the architecture of our time, the BRK Ingalls, the big team. So my partner, Leela, and I are working on creating the value and the mission around it. Leela comes from it from a development angle, and I come from it from a climate angle. I've been in the climate space for now about more than 11 to 14 years. And I've been working around it from grassroots to international policy to the entrepreneurial level. And for me, when I heard about the efforts at the plant and I had the opportunity to explore it, I knew that this was the solution missing. So much of the climate ecosystems, people work in separation. It's that SDG goal number 17 that doesn't happen a lot in so many movements. And I think climate perhaps may be the most important movement for humanity. And, you know, as someone who's been in this space for a long time, I didn't see that there was a convergence and real ability to work together and sync together. So we're solving for two main problems. The first is proximity. To be able to have all of these important climate actors in one roof, the power of that, and through it being a private, home. It's a home that's built by the people who are being impacted by this problem. And then number two is to be able to come and together and build our own climate goals. I think when not-for-profit, for-profit companies, young entrepreneurs, older established entrepreneurs come together, I think it's magic. We're going to be able to create climate goals that are going to be the new nexus of the SDG, are the evolution of the SDG, and are going to take new indicators that we can be held responsible and accountable for. And so I'm really excited about the latter. And I think it has to be a home. So we're really intentional, Kunal, about using the word home versus a hub or a center. That's because Leela and I really believe that a home is where you come to nurture. A home is where you come to grow, and a home is also where you can be welcome to be challenged and to be able to meet your challenges. So that is what we're building.
It's very interesting how you put it, that it's a home for climate solutions of the future. And probably the best part is bringing people together to make sort of collaborations happen, and then sort of ideas flow. And as home, everything, when they're nurtured, it flourishes. Probably the solutions would also flourish for a beautiful world. Now, as a concept, as an idea, it sounds really, really brilliant. But I would probably ask the hard question to you, that give us some of the examples of these ideas that people have been doing at the plant, and how today's people can sort of get inspired from that.
Sure. So we're still in the development stages. We've it's been only recent that we've been at a point of raising capital, and there's been many years of work in terms of cleaning up and construction of just cleaning the space up. The plant was abandoned for 5 decades, the space, and so we have a lot of work to do. But in terms of what are some of the ideas that are coming from members or partners that we have, there's just a huge breadth of it. I can think of one of our programmatic partners, Project Drawdown, is working on the top solutions in climate and being able to mobilize those top solutions in a way that's structured. So they have frameworks in climate that they look at, overall frameworks, and give you guidance on what are the top frameworks that really can be implemented. You have smaller organizations within our network. So we have some few that are climate scientists that are working on gender equality. Gender equality is an important part of climate because women are the first to be impacted by climate and disproportionately impacted by climate. And so if you actually solve for the climate issue, you can solve for the gender equality in that nexus, in that area. And so we have some young climate scientists who are working on water sanitation for young girls. We have Indigenous members who are working on storytelling for climate justice. We have Rocky Mountain Institute and Tom Dinwoodie at Epic Institute who are consolidating data around climate. I think that climate data should be able to live in one place and to be able to use as a nexus. And Tom Dinwoodie has been tracking and monitoring 7 vectors of data in climate that are dealing with large-scale climate challenges and providing data on how we can track and monitor. We have the Billion Oyster Project, which is a New York specific organization that works on cleaning up the oysters reef, the coral reef, and the water in the area. There are certain fish and marine life that you can only find in the Hudson Valley. and they are making sure that we preserve it. So it's really a whole system design. I can't tell you a singular project. I can tell you multiple that come together and work with each other.
Wow, that's a plethora of solutions right there. And I of course, relate to the oyster story because, the New York in earlier days, if you go back in history, used to be a hub of, oysters. And that changed after some time because, as you know, when we decide to consume, we always overconsume. And that has been one of the biggest problems of us humans as consumers of the planet, right? We just deplete the resources wherever we go. And it really sounds great to listen to all these solutions. But one of the things that you mentioned in the conversation is about, I think, access to energy as well.
Yeah.
And with growing conflicts all around the world, and there are so many people who have got displaced due to various things, whether it's natural disasters or political conflicts or civil war. It's unfortunately, we have had more people displaced in the last 10 years than probably during the World War II for various reasons. And in many cases, they have if you are familiar, you have done extensive work with the refugee crisis and those scenarios, and you have seen the problems, upfront with the systems that where the migrants live in, and in there, very limited access are there. So one of the sub-targets of this goal is also to make clean energy accessible for all. Yes. So how do we really make that happen? What would be your some pointers or suggestions on that?
Yes. So I think it's important to see the diaphragm and the apparatus of this movement and of this specific climate action goal of number 13 on SDG. So we're looking at everywhere from $26 trillion of economic benefits just in the US alone by 2030 as a result of climate. So Kunal, you have to do the math for that, right? 26 trillion just in the US. That's, that's going to be trillions around the world as well, equal if not more, right? You look at countries like China and India and Korea and Japan that are already investing in renewables, that are investing in alternative energy. So the number one is jobs. People don't realize the level of economic benefits and job creations that this industry and this climate action can bring for us. So that's one. The second is really being able to look at the fact that there's 18 million, as I said, 18 million jobs in this sector. And I really see that there are multiple avenues for clean energy that we can explore. Recently, I've heard of fusion as also a metric of energy that hasn't been quite explored. Nuclear as well. Obviously, you need the political and social will to be able to explore these energy forms that can be used in a way that is methodical and that can be used in a way that's integrated. So I think our number one challenge will be how are systems like the government and other infrastructures and lobbyists like oil companies, how are they going to be evolving? What are pressures that we, from the youth, from the older, from the women, are going to put on these lobbyist sectors, less than 1% who actually benefit from the economic policies that they create? So how are we going to shift that? And that political will I'm already seeing with the youth and the younger generation, and I feel we'll continue to see as there continues to be different forms of jobs and also economic benefits that come with climate action.
Yeah, as you said, I think it's pretty much integrated, that the generating jobs for climate action, and at the same time, solving the climate problem, how it can provide more gender equality and women empowerment. That's one of the puzzles that probably policymakers don't always see. And I'm glad that you mentioned that, for our audience as well. Now, I'm going to ask.
I want to say that now climate is integrated with everything. It's SDG goal, right? Number one, poverty, right? People who are impoverished, who are living at the edges of society, who are the first to be immigrants and refugees, are the first to be impacted by climate, are the first to be impacted by sea level risings, because they can't afford to go to their summer homes. They can't afford to have other infrastructural support. You look at hunger, SDG number 2, you look at number 3, good health and well-being. There's so many integrations of climate that I think it's a cross-sectoral issue.
Totally agreed. Now I'm going to ask one of the most confusing yet easy question, but nobody has had a good answer for this. That is, over and over, our scientists have told us that we have enough renewable energy sources and ideas to scale and solve world's energy crisis. But I know changing human behavior is probably the toughest part of it, but we haven't moved away from fossil fuels as much as we should have. What do you think are some of the challenges, and how do we actually make this now become a reality, considering that we have only 10 years left to reach the goals?
Yes, to reach the goals before it becomes preventative. I think that to some degree, we have to have a balanced perspective. It's not just about prevention, it's also about adaptation. And I think to your question, why is it? It's what a lot of the greatest faith leaders of our world have already said. It's that human beings, sometimes we get in our own way of doing what's right for us long term. And it's also the human perspective of not thinking in terms of eons, but thinking in terms of just decades or centuries even. Those are short-sighted visions and perspectives. Science has unanimously agreed that there's enough renewable energy forms, with hydro, geothermal, tidal, wind, that there can be changes now, that if we adapt now, that we can prevent the disasters that we won't be able to prevent in 10 years. However, I think the crux of it, the bottom of why we're not able to do it, is because of political and social will. Political and social will of what has been forms of power, and in some ways what has been forms of colonial power has traced back. I mean, you look at even India. India is still stuck in some of its colonial mindset with certain forms of looking at industrial power. And that takes sometimes decades to be able to reverse engineer. And I think that when we get enough populist groups of people coming together, large groups of people coming together to ask for specific changes. I'm not talking about drastic, let's overhaul the whole economy. I'm talking about what are small things we can do right now. I think when that becomes in fashion, then the world will have to concede. Then the political economy and the social economy will have to concede. And I've seen effective forms of that. I think sometimes, deals like the Green New Deal can be overwhelming for the consumer to really be able to take it in, because as a citizen, they're like, well, how can I change my entire lifestyle? But if you ask someone just to change eating vegan food once a week or vegetarian food once a day, that's a more feasible and practical change that they could actually make in their life. And I think that the way we win climate is by introducing effective forms of smaller changes that everybody can come with. Because if we don't do that, then we become our own ecosystem that just lives separately and has no integration. And sometimes I've seen that in the climate community, where we isolate ourselves with our own scientists, with our own engineers, with our own leaders, and we're almost preaching, and we're not being met with the same level. So that's what I'm so impressed by groups and young people like Shatesh Scott, Greta Thunberg, is that they're able to take small ideas and make it powerful and make it palatable for the rest of the world to understand.
In behavioral economics, they say one very first thing is that we are our own problems. And most problems are probably human problems first. And as you rightfully said, I mean, we have to look at making this effective small changes on a daily basis to our lifestyle. And probably more than the global climate goal, it is now important to focus on individual climate goals, as you put it.
Yeah.
And that's what what you're trying to do at the plant. And I'll again go back to the plant for a bit, because as you described it, as this ecosystem of climate innovators, artists, scientists, not-for-profit leaders, companies, and so many and so forth, all kinds of stakeholders are in play. Now, that means that there will be research, innovation, and lot more new ideas, and also specific individual goals to achieve. Keeping that in mind, what would be your, if I have to ask you, what is your vision to increase the world's share of renewable energy in the international energy mix, and what role is the plant going to play there?
I think the plant's number one role is to be the physical anchor of this movement. And so it's not up to me or Leela or the founders or leadership of the plant to decide what will be the goals of the climate community and climate leadership. I will really work with, we're committed to working with the climate leaders to be able to decide that, and to be able to answer for what are the renewable sources of energy that we ourselves could dedicate to be able to uplift and bring to the rest of the world. I do think, Kunal, it's important for me to highlight that renewable energy alone is not the full solution. There are other forms of solutions that are equally important, like adding the indigenous voices. I think people think, oh, it must be these highly technical carbon captures that capture emissions from the air, that's the solution. And in fact, actually, the more pragmatic, easier solution is just planting plants, planting trees. These are what the indigenous have been doing for thousands of years. These are what people and groups like Wangari Maathai and Wanjira Maathai from the Greenbelt movement. Wangari won the Nobel Peace Prize for this. These are simple solutions. So I really want to refrain from talking about technologies as the solution. It's not that. It's us. We are the solution. So we've already have the solutions within us. We already have the thousands of years of practice and the laboratory there. So I think the investment for the plant is the people.
On that note, let me ask you that, you are, or the plant is currently at the heart of New York and sort of in the USA, which is sort of way better off in some ways than other parts of the world. And developing nations, some are landlocked, some are still, sort of solely agricultural countries where access to energy is still at a very poor stage. Take Maldives or even Bhutan are facing results of climate change so much, that for example, Maldives is threatened of completely sinking. They will probably be submerged in a few years, and they are buying lands in different countries. Bhutan is, of course, facing glacial lakes have formed due to melting of the ice, and so the need of the global improvement of energy efficiency is very, very evident. So how do we really, plant is a home of climate solutions. If we have to bring these climate solutions to the developing world, and actually mostly probably where it needs it the most, how do we scale the idea? How do we bring it to different parts of the world and make it happen? And along with that, probably I'll put forward another question in the mix, that is, what would be your recommendation that the global community should probably focus on in scaling up the sustainable energy supply itself?
Yeah. Yes. I think the way the plant does it is that having those conversations at the early stages, we're having them now. We're building the blueprint of what can be possible if we take abandoned power plants, abandoned buildings in parts around the world. India has so many. You look at Mumbai, you look at Delhi, so many abandoned buildings. Why create and use all of this energy to create new buildings? Because the way that buildings are constructed are about, 46% of emissions in the air is caused by the way that buildings have been so poorly constructed and everything that goes around it, right? The energy sources to be able to construct buildings. So a major part of it is just that. So if you create a blueprint of what's possible, if you create the regenerative building that is zero waste, that is all with renewable energy, and that is actually giving back to the community, that's giving food to the community, think of how powerful that can be to scale up, to scale in different parts of the world. So how we're scaling it is that we're already integrating the voices now. We're not waiting later on to decide, oh, how do we make sure that this doesn't happen in India, or this doesn't happen in Pakistan or in Saudi Arabia? But we're doing that now, like working with an international group of people. So the plant is an international home. I mean, yes, we're based in New York, but we want and are welcoming international players, international scientists, artists, all of whom are working around climate. And so the design of it will be international. And the way we scale it, as you said, is by providing blueprints that are effective. And these have to be blueprints that can be mobile, that can be easy, that can be evolving, and that any government, if we work with them, can be able to have in their pockets to say, hey, why don't we try this in Delhi? Or hey, why don't we try this in Chennai? And that's the hope here, is that we will be building ecosystems and data rooms and climate communities and physical infrastructure in a way that can be replicated.
Wow, I mean, that sounds like a blueprint to me, and I look forward to that happening in different parts of the world very soon. Tenzin, one question before I go to Savitri here is that, pandemic has happened, and, it has sort of toppled world economy, human lifestyles, and impacted global health, so many areas in so many, difficult ways. But in terms of energy, the consumption levels have also changed across the world, as we have seen that emission have dropped in different parts, pollution level has gone down, also a bit of increase in domestic energy consumption to some extent. But clear skies have sort of been a reality after a long time, and seen across cities such as Beijing, Punjab in India, and different parts, Rome and other parts of the world as well. And there are so many, stories and news of, wildlife getting a break from us, and then they're again flourishing in different parts in the waters of Venice, and there's so many other stories that have come out. Now, what should we do in the future in terms of maintaining this positive result that has come out of the, pandemic? Because our relationship with nature is very complicated. Like,
yes,
we try to always take more than we give back, but the pandemic has put a stop on that, and there's so many things which happened in a positive light. Going forward, how do we keep that positive? What would be your suggestion?
Kunal, I think that I will challenge you on that framework. First and foremost, a lot of scientists have come out and said that a lot of the, the seals and the dolphins coming back to the shores of Hong Kong or the Venice beach is actually not true. Some of the dolphins have always been in Hong Kong. You're probably seeing them more clearly, but they've been there. So some of the here's what we've achieved is false. And so I think it's important not to play into those. However, I will say that I find that what's more remarkable is not, as you said, how emissions have gone down because of the pandemic, but what's more remarkable is how little has gone down. You would think that in some ways the world stopping would mean that there could be a way to be regenerative for our air and for our atmosphere, but it hasn't. So I think that for me, the greater lesson here is that COVID, Kunal-19 is awful. It's terrible. It has had really excruciating consequences for humanity, but I think climate change could be far worse. And this is just a glimpse of what we could experience in 10, 15, 20, 30 years if we don't take care of our planet. This is just the beginning. The lockdowns you're seeing with the masks It could be much worse. My fear is that we could live in a brick world one day where we won't even have the playgrounds that we have now to be able to go and relax and re-nurture. So our question is not, wow, how wonderful. Our question is, wow, how little. So how much more is there to go, and how much more for us to do? And I think that we should use the measure of experience we have now to be able to calculate for drastic policy changes. I think it has to come from international policy, but because I don't think this is a unilateral effort. I don't think this is a one party, one government, one person. This is a multilateral international policy effort that we have to drive. And I think that we need to start taking large, as I said to you, large human behavioral changes we need to start implementing now. Because as awful as COVID is, climate change could be much, much worse.
Thank you so much, Tenzin, for those insights. Now it's time to bring a younger voice into the equation. And I have Savitri with me, who is a young professional and also a member of our global volunteer community. And she has a couple of questions for you. So Savitri, please introduce yourself and ask your questions.
All right. I'm Savitri. I'm from Sri Lanka, connecting here from Colombo. And I'm actually a researcher. I'm a researcher and also an environmental well-being advocate. I'm also interested in international relations as well. So I'm currently working as a researcher attached to Ministry of Defense in Sri Lanka. And so my research interests environmental governance, environmental security, and also geopolitics. So that's a bit about myself. And thank you for your insights, ma'am. And I think it's important how you quantified sort of the benefits that will be there due to climate action, because that's the point that will get the attention of the viewers if you quantify the benefits. So I think that was really interesting and important. So to go to my questions, I have 2 questions for you. So I watched a lot of your videos and interviews, ma'am, over the past few days, and your dedication and never settling for anything less than what you determine is truly inspiring. So what do you think the role of women is, especially in tech sector, in finding solution to climate change? How would you bring in your own experience as a female activist? I'm sure many of our young female viewers are eager to know.
Yes. I thank you for that question. I'm so happy to hear that you're on this call. So for me, I don't like using the word activist for myself, because I think it's a badge of honor that you have to receive, because you've been out in the world, in the field, grassroots, and I haven't done that. I'm an advocate. So for me as a woman, one of the most important advocacies I can do is to make sure that women are in the center of the solution building, because it just makes for better solutions, right? You know this, Kunal, you know this, Savitri. If you live the proximity of the problem, you're much more likely to have the better solution for it. It's not science or genius, it's just the truth. So what I've done at the plant and with my own life is that I've always, wherever I've gone, I've made it a habit and an effort to include the women who are not heard, the young and old women who aren't part of the solution making, to be in the center of whatever I'm designing. Because if I include them in the beginning stages, they'll be there in the aftermath, right? So, you know, for the plant, we've done that. Gender is actually one of the most important programmatic focus we have, because gender solutions in climate is actually critical, right? There's such an overlap and intertwining of the two. So that's how I've gone about in my life. And for me, it's not just about isolating women and saying it's just women's empowerment or women's rights. It's about equality and equanimity. You know, it's about bringing and bridging those voices that have never had the time to be at any table. So that's been, you know, my priority, and that will continue to be my priority. And I think my partner Leela feels the same way. She's much more of an activist. You know, she has really dedicated her life to putting women in the center than most others.
All right, thank you for that, ma'am. I also think like we have separated as women as a separate sector, and we are thinking of gender equality where women is centered there. I think sort of blurring those boundaries are important. So thank you for that. Thank you for the work that you do. And to go to that, my next question. So innovation and out of the box thinking is a must when it comes to finding solutions to society's issues, especially when it comes to climate action. So as a youth myself, I'm sure many are out there with a lot of ideas, planning their journey right now, trying to start something new with a lot of ideas. So for youth such as this, what would be 3 action points that you recommend that should be followed in realizing their action or starting something new? What would be 3 action points?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. So the 3 actions that I can speak of are only from my experience as someone, who when I was younger and as a youth before really worked to make sure that I found important. So the first is follow through. I think sometimes young people and youth specifically can have so many ideas. They're really good in the ideation phase, but not in the execution. And you really need to follow through on that. And so follow through on whatever commitments you've made. Second is building your credibility and expertise. There is no replacement of someone who has credibility, right? If you have credibility in what you say, meaning you're able to act responsibly and follow through, and you're able to implement on what you said you'll do, then you'll build that gradually. And expertise is important because if you are an expert on a topic, you're invaluable. There are very few people in this world who are an expert on X, Y, and Z in energy, right? Like even if you take climate refugees, there's probably, a small sum of people who are the expert on that. So become an expert on your topic, become invaluable in your topic, whatever that topic is. And then third is your hunger. I see a lot of people when they become older, when they enter their 60s or 70s, that sometimes they lose that hunger of curiosity that I think that young people naturally have. So as long as you can maintain your hunger, you'll get somewhere because you'll always be seeking and searching for the questions, for the frameworks, for the challenges. So those are the 3 tips I can give that I think have worked for me.
Thank you so much. I'm sure that will help a lot of our viewers.
Sure.
Thank you, Savitri, for your questions, and thank you, Tenzin, for such a beautiful and insightful session. Well, of course, after such an insightful session, it's always tough for me to sum up because that is one of the toughest jobs as the host, but I'll try my best. A few of the things that you mentioned that will always will stuck with me. And one is that probably it's time now for us to focus on individual climate goals. Every one of us, we need to have our own climate goals to make the goals a reality. Second is we need to bring all the stakeholders together, be it governments, activists, other parts of the society, innovators, scientists, everyone, what you are doing at the plant. And really, really thank you for that. And we hope that those blueprints are soon scaled in different parts of the world, and we can take clean energy to other parts of the world more sustainably and in a faster yet affordable way. Second, all the young audience who are joining in and listening in, as Tenzin said, always follow through for what you believe in and what you start. Build your credibility and expertise, and don't forget to feed your hunger and curiosity. That's the sort of takeaways for me and probably for everyone who is joining in. And once again, Tenzin, thank you so much for making time and talking to us. Before I conclude the session, I am a quiz master, so I technically never run out of questions, but I promise you this will be my last. And that is, if you have to sum up your vision for a better world in one sentence, what would that be?
I would say it's a world that focuses on aligning the external world with the internal world.
Wow. Aligning the external world with the internal world. What a way to end. Thank you so much, Tenzin, for once
Thank
again
you.
speaking to us. And for everyone who is listening in and joining in, remember, for a world where no one is left behind, it has never been clearer that all of us have a role to play in order to bring about change. Whoever you are, no matter where you come from, every one of us can make a difference. Every action truly counts. Get involved, attend the SDG Action Conclave 2020, participate in the SDG quiz, help raise awareness about the goals, and connect with the global community of passionate volunteers. This Global Goals Week, let us all come together to spread the knowledge about people, planet, and the Sustainable Development Goals. Thank you once again all for joining us. Follow us on Instagram at Youth Forum India for all the updates. And don't forget to join our next session.